بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. صلوات عليك برار. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings on all of you for celebrating the birth anniversary of the father of Fatima, the brother of Ali, the grandfather of Hassanain, the one who has been sent as a mercy for the universe, and the one who is considered to be Allah's most beloved messenger, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This celebration becomes more joyous and, as we call it, double celebration in the Canadian style. On the special days, you have double deals everywhere. It becomes more joyous for us because it also coincides with the birth anniversary of the Imam, whose name has become the mark of identity for ourselves. And that is our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. For tonight's occasion, I received a very unusual request that we would like to hear about the life of the Prophet. We have talked about it at different times, different segments, but this is not something possible in one speech. If you want to hear about the life of the Prophet, we probably need a ashara. And I'm not proposing anything. Because you have to realize that when you are talking about the Prophet of Islam, you're talking about a personality who, even in the words of the 19th century historians of France, by the name of Lamartine, the way he describes the Prophet, he says, philosopher, orator, apostle, legislator, warrior, conquerors of lands, restorer of rational dogmas, of cult without images, the founder of 20 terrestrial empires and of one spiritual empire, that is Muhammad. And he concludes that passage where he says, as regards all standards by which human greatness may be measured, we may ask, is there any man greater than Muhammad? Salawat alayhi wa sallam. Nonetheless, I have accepted that request. And what I'm going to do tonight is just, present to you a summary, a glance of the life of the Prophet from the beginning to the end. I put that in a PowerPoint form in 3 slides, and inshallah we can go through it so that you can have an overall perspective about the life of the Prophet. We actually can divide the life of the Prophet into 3 segments. The first one, from birth to Bi'sat. Bi'sat means the beginning of the revelation, the beginning of Islam. And so you have that 40 years there. And then from Bi'sat till the time of the hijrah of Rasulullah. And then from the hijrah to the wafat of Rasul. So you can actually, look at these three segments of the Prophet's life in individual, perspective. And this is what I would like to do very briefly. When it comes to the first part, from birth to Bi'sat, basically, we are talking about the period of first 40 years of the life of the Prophet. And this was actually the era of the personal challenges for the Prophet, and also the opportunity for the people of Mecca to view and actually see the sublime akhlaq and character of the Prophet. That actually became the basis of, his mission. Before even he started talking about Islam, he already had what we call the credentials from the people of Mecca, that when it comes to the character and akhlaq of Rasulullah, he is at the top. And this is where we see, he was known as As-Sadiq and Al-Amin, the truthful and the trustworthy, long before he even started talking about Islam. During the early days, from the birth itself was in a way a challenge, because he lost his father just few months before he was born. He came to this dunya orphaned as far as the father is concerned. And he was raised by his mother under the guardianship of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. And then, at the age of six, even the mother dies. And now he is fully under the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. 2 years after that, his grandfather died. And according to the will of his grandfather, the custody of Muhammad the young was given to his uncle Abu Talib. And this is where we see that the Prophet, from that very young age of 8, was raised by Abu Talib and Fatima bint Asad salawatullah alayhi ajma'een. Under Abu Talib, when he grew up then in the early teens, he once, insisted that don't leave me alone. I want to go with you in this business trip, the trade caravan that Abu Talib was taking to Syria. And because of that insistence, Abu Talib said, okay, he was only 12 years old at that time. And there, Abu Talib realized when he met one of the monks, the religious figure from the Christian traditions, who actually was able to see the signs of nubuwwat in Muhammad, who was only 12 years old at that time. When we hear that Quran talks about the Prophet, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had asked the previous Prophet to talk about the coming of the last one, in Torah as well as Injil, and even now there are indications in there. This is not just a wishful thinking of Muslims. This was a reality. A monk can realize the signs of nubuwwat and risalat in the Prophet while he is still just 12 years old. His risalat is going to start when he is 40. And this is where he says to Abu Talib, I would like to suggest to you to take care of him, especially from those who will be his enemies. And he identifies a group there. He says, keep him safe and protected from them. And one of the signs that he saw was that whenever the Prophet would walk, wherever he goes, we have a body. During the daytime, the sun is there. Depending on which direction of the sun is towards you, there would be a shadow. What he noticed that wherever the Prophet walked around, there was no shadow at all. Salawat. That was only the only trip he had at that time. Many Christian missionaries, they use that one trip to say, oh, he learned this revelation and things like that from the Christian, priest. And then, made up presented it in his own words. Oh, this was a business trip he had gone with his uncle. He had not gone to a seminary or to study anywhere. Just one conversation there between Abu Talib and the monk about the Prophet. They try to twist that and say, see, he learned it from the Christian monks, and then put the whole, message in his own words. At the age of 20, there was actually an annual fair known as Bazar Ukaz, where all the Arab tribes would meet. And in the previous events, there had been some bloodshed between Quraysh and other tribes. And Zubayr, one of the uncles of the Prophet, actually initiated the peace process. And all the tribes came together, and they agreed to maintain the peace and to help, especially those who are oppressed in the society. And the Prophet of Islam, he was 20 years old at the time. He was there in that festival, and he is one of those who participated in that pact known as Hilful Fudul. At the age of 25, this is where now the uncle, Abu Talib alayhi salam, brings him to Khadija, the most, famous trader in Mecca, whose business was very vast. And he actually asked her that, why don't you employ my nephew? Of course, his reputation as a Sadiq and Amin was there already. He comes from Banu Hashim, a respected family, and she was also from that same, the clan. And she readily accepted and actually appointed the Prophet to become the manager of the trade caravan which was going to Syria. And she actually assigned one of the slaves to be with the Prophet, to basically help him, but also observe him. His attitude, his dealing with the customers, and give a report. It was that report which impressed Bibi Khadija. And that became the basis of the proposal which went to Rasulullah for marriage. And that is the same year when the Prophet was 25 years old and Khadija was only 28, not 40. The Muslim historians have this habit of minimizing the age of one and maximizing the age of the other. And that is the play of history. She was only 28 years old, not 40 years old at the time. Salawat. And so this is how the 40 years of the Prophet's life, after the marriage with Khadija, he managed her business. And of course, as far as akhlaq in dealing with the people was there. Let me summarize this first segment of his life. The first 40 years, the challenges were there. He came to this dunya as an orphan, taken care by the grandfather and then the uncle. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala probably wanted him to go through that phase. In Surah number 93, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this first phrase, where He says, there was a time when there was a gap in the revelation during the early days. And the Quraysh said, oh, it seems your God is not happy with you. Therefore, no messages are coming. And this is where Surah Al-Duha, Surah number 93 came down, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. That I swear by the morning sunlight and by the night when it comes down, your Lord has neither forsaken you, nor is He displeased with you. And then further, after 2 ayats, then He says, O Muhammad, I not forsaken you. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. Did he find you an orphan and gave you shelter through whom? Through Abdul Muttalib and then through Abu Talib. So this is the praise of the grandfather and the uncle in the Quran. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. O Muhammad, didn't he find you lost among the people and so guided them to you? Not the common translation where you see, oh, didn't Allah find you lost and then guided you? No, according to the tafsir of the 8th Imam, did not Allah find you lost among your own people, not known by the people, that who are you? So guided them to you. And then he says, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. Then he find you in need and made you free from need. Through whom? Through Khadija. So you have Abdul Muttalib, Abu Talib, and Khadija praised in this early stage of Rasulullah as the means of the favors that he sent down on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then we come to the second part of his life, from Bi'sat to Hijrah. This is 12 years. And this is the beginning of the mission. This is the time when the Prophet used to go for meditation and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the cave of Hira. And this is the place where the first revelation came down. The first 5 ayat. And at that time, in Nahj al-Balagha, Ali talks about it. He says the days when the Prophet increased his frequency of going to the cave of Hira to spend the time there to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody would see him there except me. There was no fridge in that cave, huh? So the food has to be brought every day. Water has to be supplied to him. It would come from Khadija, but who was the one who would take it? It was Ali. Because it's interesting, when Rasul was 8 years old, he came under the custody of Abu Talib. And Ali, when he was 5 years old, Rasulullah asked Abu Talib that I want to take him to live with me. From that age. And Ali talks about that particular day when the first revelation started. He says, I was there and I saw the nur of nubuwwat and risalat, and I saw the nur of revelation. He says, at that time I heard a very loud cry, and I asked Rasulullah, who is this crying in this way? And Rasulullah said, this is the cry of the shaitan. With the beginning of the revelation, he has become distressed. This is the version of somebody who was there in that cave. The only witness of the false revelation of the ayat of Quran is Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. In that version of the revelation of the Quran, there is no issue that, oh, Muhammad didn't know. Didn't even recognize, who is this? Goes back to Khadija and he said, afraid. He said, maybe I've been possessed by a jinn. No. According to the eyewitness who was there, Rasulullah knew what is this. And he knew who has been dismayed now. And that is the shaitan. And he says to Ali, that Ali, you can see what I see. You can hear what I hear. The difference is that I am a Nabi and you are not a Nabi. And so this is where for the first 3 years after that, the Prophet was told not to publicly, spread the message. The da'wah and tabligh has to be secretly. And it was mostly among those who were very close to the Prophet. It's only after 3 years of the Bi'sat, when now he is 43 years old, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayat where he says, وَانذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, or Muhammad, go and warn and convey the message to those who are close to you. This is the first open gathering of Rasulullah with his own clan, Banu Hashim. And interestingly, in this first public declaration of Islam, where the Prophet presents himself as a messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also introduced Ali, where he says, هذا أخي ووصي وخليفتي. This is my brother and my wasi and my khalifa among you. Salawat. And with this public, missionary activity and preaching of Islam, now the mushrikeen of Mecca became, concerned. What is this? This is something new. And basically they had problem with two issues. One was Tawheed, and the other was equality of believers in the eyes of Allah. And I talked about it briefly in the Friday khutbah. I don't want to repeat that. Initially, the response of the Quraysh was basically, they thought maybe this is just a passing phase. Just ignore it. But then they realized, no, this is not going to go away. He is gradually gaining followers. So they sat down in their own boardroom and they said, what do we do? How do we deal with this problem? The very first strategy that Quraysh adopted was known as propaganda. They said, let us look at some labels we can put on him, and so that people will, go away from him. The very first label they used was Majnoon, that he is not in his own sense. But people were not Majnoon. When they interacted with Rasulullah, they realized that there is no Junoon in him. He's not a lunatic. So when that label didn't work, they went back to their drawing board. They said, well, look at the words he is presenting as Quran, as a message of God. Because there is the rhythm at the end, they say, let us say that this is poetry. So then they changed the label from Majnoon to Sha'ir. But the most important talent that the Arabs had at that time was poetry. And they knew this is not poetry. So even that label didn't stick. So they said, let us, look at something else. And this is where one of the elders was sent to go and sit down. Listen to his words, the ayat that he's presenting. And come and tell us, is this poetry? What is this? This fellow goes there, and then he was not seen for 2 days. The elders of Quraysh went to him, what happened to you? Have you become one of his followers? He said, no. When I heard those words, I know it is not poetry. These are not nonsensical words. I would say that he has this power of controlling the mind of people. Whoever listens to his words. So if you really want to use a label against him, say he's Sahir. Don't say he's Majnoon or Sha'ir. Say he's Sahir. That he is a sorcerer. Don't listen to him. They used to actually say it. There was a house of one of the Muslims by the name of Zayd bin Arqam. This is where the Muslims used to gather initially and recite the Quran. The Prophet also would present the Quran there. Quraysh actually used to say to the people, whenever you pass by that alley of the house of Zayd bin Arqam, close your ears. Because if you hear that, you will be bewitched. You will be pulled towards it. And so this is the initial reaction that the Quraysh had. On the other hand, they realized that many of these new supporters, and this is year 614 according to the common calendar, Rasulullah is now 44 years old. Quraysh realized that he's getting, followers gradually. But majority of his followers from Mecca were people who would be considered to be low class according to their standard. Either they were poor or slaves or who came from tribes which didn't have much influence in the society. And so they said, okay, let's go after them. This is where physical torture starts. You know the story of the parents of Ammar, Yasir, and Sumayya. They were actually tortured to death, but they refused to give up Islam. And this is where Ammar, a young person, witnessing the murder of the parents, ended up doing taqiyya. First example of taqiyya in Islam. And an ayat came down about him, saying that as long as your heart was at peace, the words that you uttered to save your life is okay. And so when torture started, this is where the initial command of the Prophet came for some of the early Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia. A year after that, basically, then we come to when the Prophet is 45 years old, and this is the year where Fatima Zahra salawatullah alayha was born. A year after that, since the torture process continued, this is where the Prophet then asked Ja'far bin Abi Talib to take a larger group and to migrate from Mecca to Abyssinia. And this is the same year when Banu Hashim basically now had to, Quraysh confronted them, especially Abu Talib, that either you separate Muhammad from yourself, then we'll deal with him directly. And if you don't do that, then we will put the entire Banu Hashim under socio-economic sanction. The sanction business that you see with the Western powers is nothing new. They are muqallideen of the Quraysh of the early days. And this is where Abu Talib refused. He said, I'm not going to. They even came actually with a very ridiculous proposal to him. They said, we'll give you the most handsome young man from us. You take him as your son and give Muhammad to us. And this is where basically, of course, he refused angrily. And so they said, if this is the case, then that they initiated a socio-economic boycott. Nobody could interact with them, meet them, no business, nobody would sell anything to them, no one will buy anything. And so from all aspects, their life was in danger. And this is where Abu Talib took the entire Banu Hashim to a property he had in the suburb of Mecca, northern Sha'bi Abi Talib. And this continued for 3 years, and there is a long story behind it. I'm just summarizing here. Somehow, because of the miracle, where Abu Talib went to them and said, the agreement that you have signed, and you are hanging it inside the Kaaba, against us, according to my nephew, that piece of paper had been eaten up by the ants. There is nothing remaining other than the words, Bismika Allahumma. And yet Muslims say he's not a Muslim. Abu Talib had so much trust in the words of Muhammad that under the socio-economic boycott and sanctions, he goes to them, challenges them. He says, this is what my nephew is saying. Let's go and check. And that's so. It is the reality. And this is where this whole issue of sanction was ended. They came back. But these 3 years had its own toll on Khadija and Abu Talib. Just a year after that, both of them, passed away within few months of one another. The year after that, the event of Mi'raj took place, and gradually now the Prophet even got support from the people of Medina. They came and had a secret meeting with him. They pledged their allegiance to him. This was done even more than once. And then when the Prophet was 52 years old. So this is, we're talking about the 12th year of the mission of the Prophet. And this is the time when the Quraysh now escalated the issues. They started with propaganda and then socio-economic boycott, and now they are going for the killing. They agreed that now we have to assassinate Muhammad. And this is the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Prophet to leave Mecca, to do the hijrah and go to Medina. Because Medina already was ready to welcome Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When the Prophet left, this is where we realize even during those 12 years of the mission, the strongest support pillars for Rasulullah were the members of his own family. Abu Talib, Khadija, Ja'far, Hamza, Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen played a very crucial role in the eve of the hijrah, where the Prophet asked him to take his place on the bed, put on the green mantle, so that those Quraysh who were waiting outside, whenever they would peek in, they would see, oh, the Prophet is still sleeping. Whereas he actually had left the house undetected by them. With the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at that time, basically, we praise Ali as somebody who protected the life of Rasulullah at that time. No doubt about it. It's a very great honor. Allah revealed the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنَ النَّاثِ مَنْ يَشْرِي نَفْسُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرَضَاتِ اللَّهِ, that from among the people there are some who actually sell their life in order to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This ayat came down for Ali on that night of Hijrah. Salawat. But it was not only that fazilat, there is a fazilat even greater than that. The Prophet selected Ali there because he said, Ali, I am still considered as Al-Amin by the Quraysh. Even those who do not believe in me, they still consider me to be trustworthy. They still would come and bring their precious things for safekeeping with me. I am leaving, but I would like you to stay behind so that you can convey those items back to the rightful owner. So Ali, by staying back, did not only protect the life of the Prophet, he also protected the reputation of Rasulullah as a Sadiq and Al-Amin. Salawat. Now we go on to the moving on to the third segment of his life, and this is from Hijrah to Wafat. This is 11 years in Medina. This is the time where the Prophet now has a very large following. Majority of this people of Medina have already accepted him as a Nabi and a Rasul. And so this was the time of establishing the first Muslim society. And what he does, in the first year of the Hijrah, number one, Masjid al-Nabi is built. There was a need for a physical space where the Muslims can get together. When we talk about masjid and Islamic centers, this is the sunnah of Rasulullah. You need a place to gather. This is how you will form a community. And the second thing he does in the same year, first year of the Hijrah, he intensified the brotherhood among Muslims. He saw that the people of Medina are known as Ansar. This is their home. They have their home, their property, their family, their source of income. Most of them were farmers. But then there were Muhajirin, a small group of those who had migrated from Mecca and other places with Rasulullah or before or after him. And those muhajirin were not immigrants, they actually were refugees, if we use the modern term. And so there was a disparity in their standard of living. And this is where Rasulullah now establishes what is known as ukhuwah, the bond of brotherhood. They were already brothers because they were in the same faith. But then Rasulullah would call one Ansar, one Muhajir, and one Ansar, and he was an alim. He has knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows the temperament and the thinking of the individuals. So he will match up two individuals who were, of the same kind. And this is how he told them from the Ansar that you should take care of your Muhajir brother. Many of them actually went and divided whatever they had in their possession into half and gave one half to the Muhajir brother. And this is where we see that incident was very interesting, because at the end there was one young man left whom Rasulullah had not paired with any Ansar. He comes to the Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, what about me? And this is where the Prophet says, Ya Ali, anta akhi fi dunya wal akhirah. Ali, you are my brother in this dunya as well as in the akhirah. We could ask Rasulullah, but this is brotherhood between Ansar and Muhajirin. Ali is Muhajir. You are also Muhajir. What's going on? The brotherhood was between Ansar and the Muhajirin. This is where I'm just putting words in Rasulullah's mouth. Rasulullah wanted us to realize that, remember, the standard of Sahaba is different from the standard of Ahlul Bayt. We are still in the first year of the Hijrah. Masjid is built, the pact of brotherhood among the Muslims, and then he extends this issue. He brought the other tribes of Medina as well as the Jewish community, which was a sizable, minority there, got them together, said we should sign an agreement of peaceful coexistence because we are now citizens of one city. We need help of one another. We need to protect one another whenever there's danger or attack upon us. And so in 1 year, Rasulullah built the masjid, created this, intensified the brotherhood among Muslims, and then even brings the non-Muslims in that city closer to one another so that you can have a peaceful, coexistence with one another. Salawat. Rasulullah left Makkah. They should have been happy, but no. They said, no, we had to go and eliminate this problem. 2nd year of the Hijrah, the first battle known as Battle of Badr takes place. Badr is much closer to Medina than Mecca. The location itself shows that the people of Mecca marched all the way close to Medina to fight the Muslims. And this was the first battle. There were about 900 people, and the Muslims are only 313. Here you had mostly young, strong people. Here you had mostly people who were already reaching their old age. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped, and the Muslims were able to defeat the overpowered, overnumbered army of the Quraysh. Half of the people killed in this battle from the enemies were killed by Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. It's the life of the Prophet, but what can I do? Ali is there everywhere. So I hope people don't feel bad about it. Salawat padhte ek baar. The second year, Qibla is now also changing from Masjid al-Aqsa towards Masjid al-Haram, and there is a whole story behind it. We'll just go very quickly through it. Third year, Quraysh is very angry now. They say, we have been humiliated in this defeat. We want to take revenge. So they plan next year, they come to Uhud, which is again closer to just outside Medina. Initially, the Muslims were able to defeat the Quraysh, but because of the disobedience of some of the archmen sitting at the back on the mountain, guarding the valley, they disobeyed the officer and came down on the ground. This is where Khalid bin Walid, who was the commander of the cavalry force of Quraysh, saw the opportunity, attacks the Muslims unaware, from the back. And the victory changed into defeat, and that is the time when Hamza was shaheed. We go on then to the fifth year of the Hijrah, and the battle of Khandaq or Ahzab comes in. Again, it is the Quraysh. Now, not alone. Ahzab means, allied forces. So Quraysh and some of the Jewish tribes around and other tribes all got together. And they basically came to put the city of Medina under siege. And that is why it's known as the Battle of Khandaq. And in that also the main role to protect Islam and defeat the kuffar was played by Amir al-Mu'mineen. And you know the rest of the story about it. It is after this that the Prophet in the same year, 60th year of the Hijrah, decided to go for Umrah. Quraysh prevented him from entering the city of Mecca. Negotiations started, ending up in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. It's interesting that Muslims fought different battles, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about the peace treaty of Hudaybiyah between Muslims and the Quraysh of Mecca, it is only there He says, وَإِنَّا فَتَحْنَا لَكَ فَتْحًا مُبِينًا. O Muhammad, we have given you an obvious victory. So this peace treaty became a victory in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because why? For this 6 years of the Hijrah, the Prophet had to deal with this issue of, attack by the Quraysh. There was no security in the Arabian Peninsula at that time. Muslims could not freely move around and travel. And so this whole work of tabligh and da'wah, spreading the message of Islam, could not be done because of the security issues. This peace treaty basically opened that door. It is from the year 6th of the Hijrah that da'wah and tabligh process started. By the 9th year of the Hijrah, the entire Arabian Peninsula had become under the fold of Islam. Not by any war, but by da'wah and tabligh, to the extent that the 9th year of Hijrah is known as Amul Wufud, the year of delegations. So many delegations of the Arabic tribe would come and basically, pay their homage and recognize Islam as their faith. In between, of course, the year before that, in the 8th year, so 2 years after Sulh Hudaybiyah, Quraysh violated one of the terms of the treaty. This is where the Prophet got the opportunity. He told them, one of your allies has violated and attacked an ally of a Muslim. According to the agreement, either you go and punish them, or you separate yourself from that ally of yours and we will deal with them directly. Quraysh refused. Both options were there. They said, we don't care about it. This is where Rasulullah in the 8th year of the Hijrah went with a force of 10,000 well-armed soldiers to Mecca and was able to conquer the city of Mecca without any warfare or bloodshed. And that is known as the conquest of Mecca or the Fatha Mecca. But that is where we see when Allah says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Rasulullah called the Quraysh. He said, what should I do with you? You had seen me from childhood. You know my background. You know my character. Yet you opposed me, created hurdles for me, forced me to leave my own hometown and go to Medina. Then you came and fought me again and again. Now you violated the peace treaty. What should I do? They were clever. They said, well, they remembered the story of Yusuf and his brothers. They said, you are Yusuf, we are the brothers. And there Rasulullah says, technically I can make each one of you my personal slaves, because there was no battle fought. According to the Sharia laws, in that kind of a conquest, Rasul or the Imam had a right to take all of them as his slaves. He says, go, I make you free. اذهبوا أنتم الطلقاء. Go, you are freed slaves of Muhammad. Salawat padne ek baar. Going on to the 10th year of the Hijrah, the Hajj, which is popularly known as the last Hajj of Rasulullah. This was actually the first and the last Hajj. There was no Hajj before it that Rasulullah had done. And on the way back, the event of Ghadir took place, where the Prophet made sure that the process of succession is known to the Muslims, that after me, the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt are there as a source of guidance. And it was in the year 11th of the Hijrah, when the Prophet was 63 years old, that his wafat happened. When you look at this summary of the life of the Prophet, you see that in 23 years, the Prophet succeeded in faithfully conveying the Quran to the human society. He was a Rasul in that way, and he was an Ameen even in that Risalah. And he showed the people how to live by the Quran by his own example. And this is where he left the Sunnah for us. And then he says, after me, I'm leaving my Ahlul Bayt as a source of guidance. They are the one who will continue my Sunnah. That is where we say we follow the Sunnah of Rasulullah. But our channel to the Sunnah of Rasulullah is the most reliable, the most authentic, and the most direct. And that is the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. The Ahlul Bayt continued this process of preserving the Sunnah of Rasulullah. In the celebration of the 6th Imam, let me end with one story from his life, where he says that whenever I, issue a hadith, and if I don't give you any reference for it, you can assume that my hadith is the hadith from my father, and the hadith from my father is from my grandfather, and the hadith of my grandfather is from Hussein, and the hadith of Hussein is from Ali, and the hadith of Hussein is from Ali, and the hadith of Ali is from Rasulullah, and Rasulullah gets the messages from Jibreel, and Jibreel is sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat padne ek baar. Our Prophet and the Imams were not only good scholars, righteous people. Allah actually chose them, gave them fadail and qualities. And one of the qualities was vilayat. And that also not only vilayat tashri'i in the matters of religion, even vilayat takwini. They had the power that if they wanted to, they could control every atom of this universe. I'll just share with you one story from the life of this 6th Imam as a conclusion. Safwan bin Yahya is the narrator. This is from Al-Khara'ij wal-Jara'ih, where he talks about a person by the name of Al-Abdi, who was originally from Kufa. Abdi narrates a story. He says that one day my wife told me, it has been a long time that we have not gone back for Hajj and we haven't been able to go and visit the Imam. Let us do something. We go for Hajj and then we go to Medina and we meet the Imam, renew our bay'at to him. But Abdi says, we don't really have the resources for that. The wife says, we have some very good quality clothes and I have my ornaments, my jewelry. Why don't we sell this and then go for Hajj and go and see the Imam? So the husband agreed. The story goes on. He says that, once we went to Medina, close to Medina, my wife became seriously ill. مرضت مرضا شديدا حتى أشرفت على الموت. She reached to a point very close to death. He says we entered the city of Medina. Wherever we were going to settle down, we settled down, and then I became very, hopeless. But I decided to go and see the Imam myself. I went to the Imam. I saw him, wearing two pieces of special kinds of clothes. I greeted him. Imam asked about me. And then Imam specially asked me, how is your wife doing? So he said, she's not feeling well. And I am afraid I will lose her. Imam was silent for a moment. Then he said, Ya Abdi. That was the name of the person, Abdiyun. Anta hazinun bisababiha. Are you very sad because of her? He said, yes. Imam then says, La ba'sa alayha. There is no problem on her. فَقَدْ دَعُوتُ اللَّهَ لَهَا بِالْعَافِيَةِ. I have prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her to gain her health. You go and you will see that she is recovered and she is actually drinking a drink that she likes. The maid is serving her. He says, I, very quickly went to the house where we were staying and I saw she's okay. She's sitting down, the maid beside her with this bowl of, drink, the juice that she liked. And so I asked her, what happened to you? And she says, I was very close to death. He says, when you left, I was just looking at myself and all of a sudden I realized somebody came in with two pieces of clothes on him. She described, and it was same clothes that he had seen on Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. She says, he came. She says, he came and he said, Malika, what happened to you? Mahalika. And she says, Ana mayyitatan wa hadha malakul maut. Qad ja'a li qabzi ruh. I can see the angel of death is here to take my soul. She says that this person would come. Now he turns to the angel of death and she says, Ya Malik al-Maut. And he says, Labbaik ya ayyuha al-Imam. Imam says to him, Alasta umirta bis-sam'i wat-ta'ata lana? Haven't you been ordered to listen and obey our instructions? And Malik al-Maut says, Bala, yes. He says, I order you to postpone this death for this woman for 20 years. And Malik al-Maut says, As-sam'a wa-ta'a, I obey your command. And this is where he went away. And this is where she says, I am okay now. Salawat padhne ke baad. I apologize for the long talk, but you wanted to know the whole history. I couldn't summarize less than this. लिहाजा आखिर में रसूल की शान में कुछ अशार आपके सामने पेश करना चाहेंगे नसीम अमरोही के یہ اشعار ہیں جہاں رسول کی فضیلت میں فرماتے ہیں، وہ سیریا کے واقعے میں ہم نے کہا تھا کہ رسول کا سایہ نہیں ہوتا ہے، تو معجزہ کا ذکر کر رہے ہیں۔ اول تو جسم کا نہیں سایہ، یہ معجزہ۔ پہلا معجزہ یہ ہے کہ جسم کا سایہ نہیں تھا، پھر بے پڑھے جہاں کو پڑھایا، یہ معجزہ۔ امی کہا جاتا ہے نا، didn't go to school, didn't see any teacher، پوری دنیا کو پڑھایا۔ پھر ایک شہر علم بسایا، یہ معجزہ۔ تیسرا معجزہ یہ تھا کہ شہر علم بسایا، جہاں رسول کہتے ہیں انا مدینۃ العلم۔ اور اس کے بعد جو معجزہ ہے، حیدر صدر پھر اس میں بنایا، یہ معجزہ۔ آخر میں قرآن کو انہوں نے معجزہ پیش کیا ہے نسیم امروئی میں، وہ فرماتے ہیں پھر معجزہ کتاب کا آیا جہاں میں، اللہ بولتا ہے نبی کی زبان میں۔ قرآن کلام الہی ہے لیکن آیا ہے رسول کی زبان میں۔ صلوات پڑھنے کے بعد خداوند عالم کی بارگاہ سے دعا ہے، خداوند اس قریبہ قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کو بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما۔ خداوند ہمیں توفیق دے کہ صحیح معنوں میں ہم محمد آل محمد کی سیرت کو اپنا سکیں اور اس کی بنیاد پر اپنی زندگی کو بسر کریں۔ خداوند امام کی ظہور میں تعجیل فرما۔ ربنا تقبل منا انک انت السمیع العلیم۔